So Ed, I'm going to say with complete certainty of anyone on the planet that you're the only person that has been inside Fort Knox and inside the Texas Bullion Depository. So what do you think of the importance, the availability for Americans or Texans to store gold at the Texas Gold Depository?
Great question, Miles. And I think you're right. I've certainly been in Fort Knox, and I don't recall any mint director ever being at the Texas Bullion Depository. Both of them hold a unique place in my heart. One is being one of the very few people to be able to visit Fort Knox, because that was part of my job. I didn't do the ceremonial. I went there once and then never went back again because I saw it. But I cared about our employees there. And so during my time as mint director, I made multiple visits each year to our facility in Fort Knox just to make sure our team was doing well. Because that's a unique assignment. When you're assigned in Fort Knox, you're basically working in a submarine.
Is Odd Job still there? Sorry. If anybody knows the movie from James Bond.
Yeah, right.
I always wanted to meet, I wanted to catch the hat once.
Yeah, and it's not multiple floors with open cages.
So Ed, most people that have seen some of the James Bond movies have obviously seen Goldfinger. And I think a lot of people have a thought that when they watch that movie, they've already seen what Fort Knox looks like in the inside. And I think maybe if you could maybe give a little bit of your description of your multiple visits to Fort Knox and give people a chance to get a little bit better idea of that.
Yeah, and there's only so much I can tell you, Miles. Otherwise, I'd
You'd
have to kill
me.
you, and we'd lose one of the world's greatest graders. So, right. Compared to Goldfinger the movie, Fort Knox looks the same from the outside. It's just this little white building on top of a mound, and that's Fort Knox. But it goes much deeper than that. Fort Knox was built to store all the gold that Roosevelt, in essence, confiscated from Americans in 1933. And he needed a place to put all that gold. And so they figured the safest place, given the technology at the time, was to make it inland America and put it in the middle of a military fort. And so that's why Fort Knox was chosen. And to me, it's been amazing because when you go in there as a person who loves history and coinage, you can see a lot of the gold bars that are stored in gold at Fort Knox. They're dirty. So when you go to like the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and look at the bullion vaults that they have there, they're all new 400-ounce good delivery bars that are shiny because gold doesn't corrode. So why does this gold look dirty and rusted and basically old?
It's
right?
oxidization over time sitting.
Yes, of the other metals that were put into gold coins at the time to make them stronger. And so that percentage, whether it was bronze, silver, or whatever mix, when Roosevelt got it, he took those coins, melted them down into these bars, and put them in Fort Knox. And so most of the bars in Fort Knox are what we call coin bars, which are these discolored bars that are there. We stored the 10 1933s in Fort Knox, as well as other things during World War II for other countries. So it's a great historical facility that not many people have had a chance to experience firsthand.
Yeah, there's different great assets over the time of Fort Knox that have been stored there from the stories that I've heard. I don't know if the Magna Carta may have been stored there or the Constitution.
Flirting with death again.
Oh, okay, I'll leave it alone. I'll leave it alone. But most people don't realize that the most countries and banks around the world, when they trade gold amongst each other physically, it's in 400-ounce bars.
Yes.
And those are on demand and what they require to participate in that. And I think that's almost on the COMEX the same way.
Yep.
But it's in 400-ounce bars. So if you can imagine, how heavy those are on an individual basis.
There are 26.5 pounds apiece.
Well, I asked the right guy.
Yeah, right. And since then, Fort Knox has diversified its facilities, so it still holds roughly half of America's gold reserves, but the other parts are evenly split between Denver and Philadelphia. Excuse me, West Point. It's split between two other mint facilities, so it's not all in one facility.
Simply stated, when you're the U.S. Mint Director, you're over Fort Knox as well.
Yes.
As the United States Mint. I don't think a lot of people realize that, the duties and responsibilities of a Mint Director.
Yeah.
And you said that's a military base that really, at Fort Knox, Kentucky, that is the security team for Fort Knox.
That's right.
And I take it there's probably the arm of the Mint Police.
Yes.
That also, guard the different mints throughout our country that manufacture coins, but the Fort Knox facility works the same way under the heading of the U.S. Mint Director.
Yep. And I remember my first visit. I wanted to pay a courtesy visit to the commanding officer of Fort Knox, just because I'm on his territory, even though this land has been given to the mint to use to build the Bullion Depository.
So how did that tour go with the military when you visited Fort Knox? I don't know what you want to talk about or not.
Yeah, well, first of all, I had there's not a lot of hotels around Fort Knox. It's mainly a military
So
town.
you're a barracks kind of guy.
Yeah, well, and the base officer, I was able to use their guest house. So it was great to be woken up by two staff sergeants that had your breakfast. They were cooking it in your kitchen, and you could just smell the bacon as you were headed to the shower. And so they treat their people really well.
That was woken up by a bugle call of some sort.
Yeah, right. But there's also complications because when you have employees there, they have to come in and out of the base. There's all that security. They have to go in and out of the Fort Knox Bullion Depository, which is added in more complex security. And so what you basically want is you want them in the building for as long as possible. And that means multiple days stays for some of them, just because it's easier. And they cook there, they bring their food there, etc.
They're kind of like firefighters where they work multiple days on, multiple days off.
Yeah. And that just as an employee, it brings a whole host of other issues that you have to be cognizant of. Boredom, when you have a facility like that, so you have to figure out ways to keep everyone sharp all the time. But nevertheless, it was a privilege to be there, and a pleasant part of the portfolio of what the Mint Director provides oversight and direction to.
Yeah, I always found it to be an amazing thing. It had to be a great honor, obviously not to just be the 38th U.S. Mint Director, but over so many mints, wide. You have West Point, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Denver, and then of course Fort Knox as a facility is the Gold Vault.
Yep.
Just a tremendous honor.
Well, and that's why it was really interesting that when U.S. Gold Bureau and Texas Tangible Assets came to me after Texas had passed legislation and Governor Abbott had signed it into law that would create the first bullion depository. So in my world, that's a really big deal, right? Because the only government-owned bullion depositories are by the federal government, and that's really Fort Knox and then the storage that we have at West Point and other places. And so when you have that, having a state develop its own depository, in my world, that is radical thinking, radical news, right? And so I met with the legislators that put that together to try to get a little bit more insight into what they were trying to do. And it ranges all the way from, parts of Texas government have part of their emergency reserves diversified into gold, and they wanted a place to repatriate that gold if they wanted to. A lot of citizens here in Texas own gold, and they wanted a homegrown depository that would be managed in a transparent way. They were also doing some thinking and laying the groundwork for implementing Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, which allows states to declare that gold and silver can be used as legal tender in those states. Now, when the Constitution was written, gold and silver was legal tender, and it didn't matter what country it came from, because an ounce of gold was an ounce of gold, an ounce of silver was an ounce of silver. But the problem you had was you had to trust the government, right? Spanish doubloons would be different than English coins, etc. And then, because it was the weight that was important, if you needed $50, you would just cut the silver in half, right, or a quarter. That's where we get halves and quarters, right? And what our founding fathers wanted, and they knew that they needed to do this in order to have a prosperous country, was to unify the currency to be the federal government's responsibility. But they also realized the value of gold and silver, and they wanted to give states, because the banks in South Carolina were printing their own currency, and they needed to have it all under one umbrella. So they want to take those rights away from the states, but they had to give the states something, and that was the ability to declare gold and silver legal tender. That has never been implemented in the United States since written in the Constitution, but since the financial crisis, there's up to 12, maybe 14 states, depending on what you consider the status, that are pursuing monetizing gold and silver as legal tender. Texas is one of them.
Making use of their advantage or opportunity to preserve that wealth in their own states, in case they want to offer anything or make any changes. Yeah. Obviously, Texas has been leading the way with this depository, and I think it's a fantastic addition to moving gold and silver depositories away from the East Coast and putting it more in the central part of America.
Absolutely.
I think it's a fantastic location.
Yeah. So it's a great idea, and it's one that U.S. Gold Bureau was given the contract for, and I'm just happy to be a part of that process and collaborate, because I think this is more important than just a business opportunity. I mean, it really says a lot about our monetary system and the integrity of it, and I think this type of thing helps.
Right.